World War II, invented September 1st, 1939 by a Japanese man, a large spaghetti boy, and a German dude with a really small mustache. Despite technically starting in 1939, the foundation for the war was laid down at the end of the trash fest that was World War I. Most nations wanted peace for as long as possible after that shit show. Why send all of our nation's young men to either die in a literal hole in Germany, or come home from Germany and then die in a metaphorical hole of PTSD and depression? Doesn't sound ideal. Germany, Italy, and Japan, however, were all experiencing the same thing, and each of these were main contributing factors to World War II. A Great Depression, massive superiority complexes, a general sense of anger and hatred, and anxiety and fear over what the future will hold if things don't change. Basically, all the things that cause emo pop punk to be popular are also the things that caused World War II. And yes, I am saying that pop punk is just as bad as World War II. You know I'm right! The Treaty of Versailles crippled Germany financially, militaristically, politically, and musically. Have you ever heard German music that was released in the 1930s? It's fucking trash. The German people felt they were unfairly blamed and punished for World War I. I mean, they didn't shoot that Austrian guy, and they didn't invade Serbia to begin the fighting. Sure, they were standing behind the curtain giving instructions to Austria-Hungary, but that doesn't mean they're at fault for what happened. If I meticulously plan out a murder, purchase the murder weapon, and then instruct someone else on how to commit said murder, am I guilty of anything?
Yes.
Shut up! They were tired of everyone talking shit. Everyone saying, hey, fuck you, Germany. You were cooler when you were Prussia. You know, back when you were fighting Napoleon and being run by a man with a respectable mustache and inventing the car, doing some real hype shit. Now look at you. Your leader's some ding whose soul patch drifted too far north, and you're a nation of industrious people with nothing but good beer and bad ideas. Not a great combination. There's nothing more dangerous than a hard-working, determined person who is on the liquor hard. Oh my god, Germany is Mr. Leahy. And Italy is Randy Bobandy, holy fuck. So the German people, much like their language, were very angry and very loud, and they were only getting angrier and louder as time went on. Until one day, their anger and loudness coalesced to form the single most angry and most loud German of all time, which if you know any German people, you understand how massive of an accomplishment that is. This embodiment of German anger quickly rose up the political ladder until he reached the tippity top, becoming Chancellor of Germany. What were his qualifications to hold such political power? Simple. Angry and loud. Have you not been paying attention? Come on, man. Italy, on the other hand, wanted war because they were promised a crusade in World War I, and all they got was the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. The distinct lack of Holy Land in their possession did not sit well with them, so Benito Marinara promised the Italian people that he would form a new Roman Empire. And it's been a long while since there was a Roman Empire that, you know, had Rome in it, so this idea resonated with the people of Italy. And Japan just wanted to fuck shit up. Their reasoning's really the most straightforward, and most understandable. With that explanation of why these dinguses wanted war, let's get right into what actually happened. Like any angry teenager, Germany, Italy, and Japan began lashing out at those closest to them in their fits of very discriminate rage. Italy annexed Ethiopia, Japan fucked with China a lot, and Germany said fuck the Treaty of Versailles and annexed Czechoslovakia and Austria. In response to this, the League of Nations did nothing. Nothing at all. If the Axis powers were angsty teens, then the League of Nations were the idle parents who were either unwilling or unable to control their shitball child. Probably both, actually. After Ethiopia was drowning in about 3 feet of marinara sauce, their king was like,
Hey, can I get some help over here?
After getting no response from the League, he went straight to their clubhouse where he said something like, if you don't get these fucking Italians out of my country, they're gonna go to your countries as well and sauce them up. And trust me, you're not going to enjoy it. This also got no response because no one else was at the clubhouse. This is the League of Nations after all. No one gives a shit. Eventually, other European nations got tired of Germany running amok and decided to step in and do something about it. Quick side note, I know in the World War I video I went year by year explaining in perfect detail exactly what took place over the course of the war. Yeah, I'm not going to do that this time because I don't want to. I'm going to just freeball it, see how it goes. So war begins for real when Germany invades Poland, and they invite the Soviet Union to partake as well. The Germans didn't actually like the Soviets in any way, they just split the profit here to pacify them for a little bit, and make sure they can roll over Poland as quickly as possible. It's like that girl you keep around who you don't really like, but she can suck a bowling ball through a straw, so you might as well keep that level of talent around, and keep her happy. Germany's main reason for invading Poland was their hatred of the Polish Corridor, a little slice of Polish land that separated this part of Germany from this part of Germany. Not to be confused with the body modification known as the Polish Corridor, where a woman has a hole made in her body which connects her rectum to her vagina. This hole acts as a form of birth control during vaginal sex. You see, a man can slip through this Polish corridor and ejaculate away from the uterus, effectively avoiding pregnancy. After Poland is done getting DP'd by Germany and the Soviets go and invade Finland, and then change their mind and go home. Finland is basically Russia's Vietnam. They don't like to talk about it. Germany begins their conflict with Great Britain by simultaneously invading neutral Scandinavia with them. You remember after the fight between Conor and Khabib when Khabib jumped out of the cage and started fucking up that dude in the crowd? Okay, imagine that, except both Conor and Khabib jump out of the ring at the beginning of the fight and start fucking up random people in the crowd, before eventually returning to fight each other. This analogy would work better if they were British and German instead of Irish and Russian, but fuck it, whatever. When asked why the British military was wasting resources and time invading Scandinavia instead of fighting the Germans, British officer Major Nance said, "Our revenge against those Viking shits is long overdue." With that out of the way, the war can begin for real this time. So in the First World War, Germany's strategy was something like this. Mobilize most of their forces into France by going through Belgium in order to get them out of the way as quickly as possible. Then, turn around, use their entire military power to take out Russia before they can even figure out what's going on, and just hope Great Britain doesn't get involved while this is happening. This didn't work out well for them the first time around. So can you guess what their plan was the second time? It was to mobilize most of their forces into France by going through Belgium in order to get them out of the way as quickly as possible, then turn around, use their entire military power to take out Russia before they can effectively organize themselves, and just hope Great Britain doesn't get involved while this is happening. Maybe it'll work this time. Spoiler alert, didn't work this time. I mean, Great Britain had already confirmed their involvement this time around, so why would you... whatever. France anticipated this plan of attack and built a wall along their border, which Germany paid for. In response, the Germans just walked around the wall. 2000 IQ outplay, impeccable wartime genius, strategy at a level never seen before. France, having spent a large portion of their resources on wall construction and stationing 100% of their military at said wall, were toppled in about a week. Compared to the first time around, Germany was seeing an improvement in results. What about Italy, though? What were they doing during this time? You know, they were doing some things in the Mediterranean and Africa. Yeah, they were doing it big, they were doing it fast, on their grind, out there giving 110%, real team effort, boys. Alright, they weren't doing much, but they were trying their best. On the other side of Eurasia, Japan continued to steamroll over every piece of land they could get their hands on, and eventually reached all the way down to the northern coast of Australia, where they finally met some resistance. In the time between World War I and World War II, the greatest conflict in Australian history took place. You've probably heard of it. It's called the Emu War. This was a war to determine whether the people of Australia, or the emus of Australia, would hold domain over the island. The continent. It was a hard-fought war with hundreds of thousands of casualties on either side, but eventually, the people of Australia achieved victory and brought the emus to submission. So now the Japanese military had to face off against the combined might of both man and nature. You know the Nameless King in Dark Souls 3? Imagine an army of 200,000 of him, except instead of a demigod wielding a lightning spear riding a dragon, you have a drunk Australian dude wielding a Bren machine gun riding an equally drunk flightless bird. Just as terrifying, if not more terrifying in my personal correct opinion. With Germany reaching the English Channel and hurling insults in the form of aerial bombardments back and forth with the British, Japan reaching a blockade of Australian alcoholic avian assault troopers, and Italy, the war had reached a temporary pause in action, which means it's time for our wartime intermission, where we go and take a look and see how things are going back on the home front. How are things in France? Well, other than the fact that you're Germany now, everything else is pretty much the same. What about Denmark and Norway? Germany. The Netherlands, Belgium, Yugoslavia, Greece, Germany! With so many places being Germany, let's just see how things are going in Germany. Wow, it's great. Unless you're Jewish, Slavic, Romani disabled, old, gay, or committed wrongthink. In that case, it fucking sucks. You see, the Germans avoided using chemicals in warfare because they believed it to be inhumane, which is fine. But they did the opposite of avoid using chemicals on people they didn't like, which is the opposite of fine. In Britain, people are starting to get tired of these goddamn Kraut planes bombing their house every fucking day, so they've elected a prime minister who will actually maybe do something about it. In the Soviet Union, there's a lot of people and a lot of communism. In Italy, everyone is quite content, seeing as how all the fighting is taking place in a far-off land, but that'll change real quick. Spoiler alert. In Australia, people are trying to avoid all that nature around them that desperately wants them dead, so same as always. And the USA has remained neutral in very large air quotes. They've been giving their moral support to their homies, and in a similar vein to Spain in World War I, they're working on a top-secret superweapon and don't want anything to spoil the surprise. Back to the war. So Germany can't get across the English Channel because German people can't swim, and they didn't want to push into Spain because who gives a fuck? So what do now? Well, they've had dominant victories in a single front war, and with a 100% win rate on one front, if they open up fighting on another front, that would bring their win rate up to 200%. So they would win the war 200 times faster.
Yeah, that's not how math works.
Shut the fuck up. So Germany begins stage 2 of their war plan. Fuck everything up by attacking the Soviet Union and split our forces into a dumbass two-front war. Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue, but it tells you everything you need to know. While doing this, the Germans tell Japan that since they're making the Soviet Union a clear enemy, they need to try and avoid bringing in any other major enemies into this war. So do whatever you can to prevent the USA from fighting us. Now, the average IQ in Japan is 105. Since these are high-ranking military and political personnel we're talking here, we're probably dealing with people who have IQs that range from 120 to 150. Given this level of intelligence, what course of action would you think they came up with to prevent another nation from wanting to fight them? Correct. Obviously, attacking them. Fucking genius. It's foolproof. If you attack someone first, the odds of them wanting to fight you are slim to none, which is why it was so surprising that after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the Americans went from 0 to 100 real fucking quick. This was the beginning of the end for the bad guys. Sure, Germany managed to push pretty deep into the Soviet Union very quickly, but it didn't matter. As soon as winter hit, the German military turned into an ice version of the Terracotta Army, and the USA had either repaired or replaced the boats and people that Japan destroyed at Pearl Harbor within like a month. And Italy was still fucking about in the Mediterranean. If you haven't picked this up yet, Italy hasn't been super helpful this whole time. They talked the talk before the war, they had a lot of hype, but they've really fallen flat. They're the Rick DiPietro of the Axis powers. With the combined naval and avian might of the USA and Australia, Japan was pushed back island by island. Germany was also being pushed back on the Eastern Front. While they weren't outgunned by the Soviet Union, they were certainly outmanned. Every time you killed a Soviet soldier, 2 more would burst out of his chest to finish the job. And the fighting in Africa and the Mediterranean finally pushed back into Italy, and the Italians' blasé attitude about the whole thing came to a head when they decided to execute their leader and switch sides once things started going sour. Seeing the Soviets having so much success counter-pushing against Germany, the other allies wanted to prove that they could fuck up Germany as well. So they staged the largest naval invasion in history. The trick they figured out, before the Germans could uncover this secret, was to use boats to cross the English Channel instead of just trying to swim. Because, obviously, for this operation, the USA and Great Britain called on Canada to contribute their one military objective per war, which was to capture one of the 5 beaches being invaded. Canada took Juno Beach, the Americans took beaches Bruno and Culo, and the British took Uno, No Go, and what was the last one? You know. After this successful invasion, Canada went home, preparing for the next armed conflict in which they would do literally one thing. From here, the British, Americans, and French pushed into Germany from the west, while the Soviets pushed in from the east. The Soviets called dibs on Berlin, so everyone else just had to sit around and wait for them to get in there and take it. During this whole fall of Germany, things were really falling apart for Hitler. People were trying to assassinate him left and right, a bunch of members of the Nazi Party were kicking it to South America, and when the Red Army came knocking at his door, there was really only one thing left that you could do. With Italy and Germany firmly dealt with, it was time to finish things off with Japan. Remember that American superweapon? Well, they finished it, and now they wanted to see what effect large explosions have on people. They couldn't get clearance to drop it on an American city, so they went with Japan as option 2. The results from the test are as follows. In the short term, drastic decrease in living things, drastic decrease in buildings, drastic decrease in imperialism, and drastic increase in westernization. And in the long term, a drastic increase in cancer rates. Shortly after this bombing, Japan joined their Italian and German comrades in defeat. With the second big boy war over, it was time for the loser to face some form of punishment. And just like last time, it was decided that this was all Germany's fault. Unlike last time though, this punishment wasn't built to completely fuck Germany, just mildly fuck them until they could pull themselves together. And rather than slapping a fuckload of sanctions on them and then piecing out, the Allies decided to occupy Germany for a while to oversee its rebuild and ensure that another spawn of anger and hate wouldn't appear. I mean, the Germans were now 0-2 in world wars, so that probably wasn't going to happen anyway. This is clearly not their forte. From now on, they're just going to focus on soccer or something. Also, unlike last time, the post-war best friend club that was established had a mission statement that read, "We're going to actually do things, instead of not do anything like last time." Maybe. The unsteady peace that followed this war was mainly under threat by another potential full-scale war between the embodiments of capitalism and communism. But that's a story for another time. Like, for real another time. I'm not making another war video next, fuck off. And now, I'd like to give a shout out to some of my patrons. Abstract, Andis, Ben, Buddy from Duroc Me Son, Citrus L Thrust, Cole, Colin Fire Sr., Damien, Daniel, Doffy, Magnum, Henk, Hooded Angel, Jack the Yak, Jeb Should Have Won, Juice Goose, Michael, Nathan J, Nathan K, Nick, Nick F, Rain, Retard Alert, Rodrigo, Samuel, Scott, Informed aka Sean, Seba S. Bob, Snackawoo, Snaby, Thugginator, Varentorix, William, Zachary, and Xander Cage. And now a few words from some of these patrons. Boo! If I donate like $300 a month, will you fly out to the US once a year and give me 30 minutes of head or what? Gonna be a no from me. Flexibility? You mean the ability to flex. Breaking news, Canada is still America's hat. Hayasaka is a better waifu than Kaguya. In every way, and anyone who says different is fucking wrong. Hi mom, I told you I was as fiscally responsible as the United States Congress. Memes aren't funny if they're on Twitter. Traps are love, traps are life. Deadlifting sumo is big gay, don't at me. Snakes are just vor enthusiasts. Fun fact, Adolf Hitler was actually way ahead of his time when he pioneered the one-armed dab. P.S. I love you, Damien. May we all get what we want, but not what we deserve. Anyone who sees and paints a sky green and fields blue ought to be sterilized. Adolf Hitler. The fuck does that mean?